place to park too. So anyway, our effort today. Well, let's go through and get a roll call for the recorder. You can start.
Felix Rivera.
Jim Steele.
Jason Bockenstead, Mayor's Office.
Forrest Dunbar.
Rose Bully.
Ethan Berkowitz.
And in the audience, please.
Mayor Hill. Always spoke for us.
Mike Jans.
Jim Potter, Mark Primo, Jim Biggs, Bruce Robeson,
Jedediah Smith. Chris Schutte, OECD.
Parker Jones.
Good. Thank you guys for coming. This is, to me, a very interesting concept that I'm anxious to see or anxious to hear from Jason about, and it's about stormwater utility. And it's a concept that I have been hearing about, floated around for a while, and I'm glad to see that we're starting to get things on paper and get the concepts down. And we've always had to deal with stormwater, but Jason, why don't you go ahead and get us started?
Yeah, so thank you for letting us give this presentation on the work that we are doing with the Stormwater Utility Implementation Plan. Before I kind of dive into the meat of the presentation, I do want to just kind of give a short overview of the history behind this and why we are looking at this. This stormwater utility concept has been talked about here in Anchorage for well over 20 years through a number of different administrations and a number of different groups around town. The proposal that we are putting together is based on best practice research. I believe that all of you have the map. This isn't a new concept. There are over 1,600 of these stormwater utilities that have been established throughout the lower 48 to manage these issues regarding stormwater and accompanying infrastructure. So about a year ago, it kind of got new legs. The Live, Work, Play Infrastructure Subcommittee unanimously supported this proposal. That group included individuals such as Mark Primo and Tim Potter and other individuals. After it was unanimously supported by them, AEDC, the AEDC Board of Directors also wrote a letter in support, and I believe you guys have that as well, that this is an important piece for developers and home builders to make sure that development around Anchorage is built properly. So the first phase, we already completed that. That was during kind of first quarter budget revisions where we brought the proposal to you for funding. We subsequently developed and released the RFP and awarded the contract to Stantec. And Bruce Robeson, the project manager, is here as well. So work to date, we are currently in phase 2, which is the development of the implementation plan. And some of the work that includes is we are doing the preliminary condition assessments of the ARTSA and LRSA stormwater infrastructure, financial summary of what our current level of service is, and that's essentially what are we currently spending on stormwater related issues within this proposed service area. We've also, as I mentioned, there's over 1,600 communities that have developed these types of utilities. So we looked for comparable communities that similar in population, similar in size, similar in the type of infrastructure that we have. So we've developed a few. I'm going to just give you an overview of one of those today. We've also developed a large stakeholder engagement plan, and that includes creating a steering committee that has already met a couple of times, that is composed of individuals, both MOA and private sector as well, and some of those are here today as well. And we are also doing the legal analysis behind developing an ordinance that would create this utility. So kind of what would come next? That's obviously phase 3, and that would only happen after the assembly voted to approve the ordinance and create the utility. But the big pieces in that phase would include the development of a stormwater master plan and capital improvement plan. And I'll talk more about those later, but these are two very important pieces that other communities have developed and really it has allowed them to more proactively manage their stormwater assets. Because as you'll see right now, we are being very reactive in how we deal with these types of issues. The other two big things that'll happen is with your input is we'd establish what the service level would be for the utility. And then there would be a full rate study that would be done to match up what the rates would need to be to meet that service level. And then finally, we just anticipate that piece of it would take anywhere from 18 to 24 months to do a good thorough job on that. So kind of why stormwater utility? And one of the things that I think is kind of important to get people to wrap their heads around, we have roughly 625 miles of stormwater infrastructure just within the Anchorage Bowl. And that is roughly the driving distance between Anchorage and Whitehorse. And as, again, you'll see here in a little while, anywhere from 50 to 85% of the infrastructure that we have right now is either already failed or near failing. So just think about this drive. If you've done this drive recently, imagine if 85% of this drive was on a road that had nothing but potholes or was completely gone. It wouldn't be very enjoyable, and I think a lot of people would be demanding that something be done to fix that. So just a couple of other reasons why we're looking to create a stormwater utility is kind of the health and water quality aspect and the safety aspect. All stormwater is essentially put into our bodies of water throughout town, be it Campbell Creek, Ship Creek, Cook Inlet. It all ends up somewhere in one of our bodies of water. And it can be, it obviously has contaminants and other things, so this is just one reason to hopefully improve the water quality. The second one is this allows us to create a more equitable system. Right now, and I'll talk again about this in a little while, is our system of how we currently handle how we pay for stormwater related issues is all property tax based. So there are certain individuals and groups that pay nothing for the stress that they put on the system. So we'd be looking to make that system more equitable and spread the costs around to everyone in a more fair manner. And finally, this is just smart, best management practices. As I mentioned, there's been over 1,600 of these created already, and it will allow us to more proactively manage our stormwater assets. So, like I said, we looked at some comparable communities around the country, and the one that I'm going to talk about today is Greensboro, North Carolina. They created their utility in 1994, and they have roughly the same population as we do. Some of the reasons why they wanted to create the stormwater utility are the exact reasons why we are looking at it today, which is, they had an aging stormwater infrastructure. They had to comply with MS4 requirements, and they had an increased demand to maintain an open drainage system. So, and just like we do not have a stormwater drainage master plan or a CIP, and we don't have a dedicated revenue stream to deal with these stormwater related issues. So, kind of what were the outcomes? They created their stormwater utility following industry best management practices. As a result, they created a revenue stream through the creation of an enterprise fund, and they created a stormwater master plan, which is allowing them to now more proactively manage their stormwater drainage system. Some secondary benefits that I believe would also, be benefits for Anchorage. I'll just talk about a few of them, and it's the second one, which is they integrated their stormwater drainage review into their overall city's development and redevelopment plan review process. And if you read the letter from AEDC, that's kind of one of the big reasons that AEDC sees this as a priority, is that developers are bearing or are being burdened with extra costs to handle some of the stormwater related problems that have been growing, and all of a sudden they're at the end of the line at a development, and now they have to fix everyone else's problems. So, creating a master plan and then integrating this into our review process would be beneficial. And again, partnering with Parks and Rec to maintain their streams and corridors more naturally would obviously be very important for a lot of folks that live here in Anchorage.
For the record, Mr. Abbott has joined us.
So, kind of what were the rates that were charged? When they first created it in 1994, they, like us, probably didn't have all of the information in terms of impervious surface area for individual residential lots. So they went with kind of a flat fee based on a certain square foot area. But over the last 25 years, they've developed this information through their GIS system and have developed a three-tiered approach that more accurately reflects the stress that certain places put on the system. And as you can see, the difference in annual revenue is going to be roughly kind of what we spend, as I talk about that a little bit later.
Mr. Croft has joined us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So I did want to just kind of, you guys have this map in front of you as well, but this is kind of the proposed service area, essentially all the way down to South Anchorage, up to the kind of J-Bear, and then out over towards the airport. And the mountains is the other boundary.
Excluded portions are those that have their own service areas for water?
What's that?
The excluded areas in South Anchorage are because they have their own service areas?
So the non-hashed areas are places that are independent service areas. So those are essentially homeowners associations or others that, for lack of a better term, are kind of the pass the hat type stuff. So this is just the service area overlaid on top of the assembly districts. Kind of what I'm going to talk about now is I'm just going to go through each of the individual assembly districts and kind of point out some issues that each of them are having. So, District 1, some of these photos speak louder than words, and you remember how I can ever describe them. But just in District 1, there are 41 known drainage issues that MOA street maintenance deals with on a regular basis. And as we go through this will be a common theme. And I do want to just mention that we have skipped over District 2, mainly because it's only within the service area. It's a very small portion of District 2. We do know that there are issues within there, but because it's so small, we don't really have any photos of the issues in that small portion. So District 3 over in West Anchorage, there's at least 38, and again, you can just kind of see the failing systems in a number of locations around town. As we get into Midtown, there's at least 49 areas that street maintenance that has to deal with on a regular basis. And again, I just mentioned that street maintenance isn't a construction company. All they are, their expertise is in maintaining the system, not doing the massive work that is needed to repair some of these failing systems. Over in East Anchorage, there's at least 42 known drainage issues that street maintenance deals with. And then down in South Anchorage, there's at least 14 that street maintenance deals with on a regular basis. But I do just want to point out that we do know that there are a lot of other issues that the LURSs and independent service areas are dealing with. Street maintenance only occasionally has to go and help because the problem has gotten so bad. So, again, and then just kind of the LURSs, the issues with LURSs is the poor ditching, missing or poorly functioning driveway culverts, ongoing issues with freezing infrastructure. So, one of the points that I do want to make just about some of these votes, I'm going to go just back one more, is in our conversations with street maintenance and Paul Van Landingham, he has been with street maintenance for 21 years. He knows of a whole host of issues regarding stormwater infrastructure that he is still dealing with today that he dealt with 21 years ago. So for 21 years, we have been dealing with issues in a Band-Aid approach where all we're doing is sending street maintenance out to basically cover up a problem without actually fixing the underlying problem. So if there's one point that I would make is that is a very costly and ineffective and inefficient way to handle our infrastructure. So why is a stormwater master plan needed? We thought this would be an interesting slide to kind of talk about. It's over at West Anchorage, 71st Avenue in Sherrill. It's right above Campbell Elementary. You can see this where it says failed pipe. That is in between two homes. We have roughly 10 feet of right-of-way, and that pipe is buried 9 feet deep. It has already failed, so street maintenance can't go in there and slip line it. So we are trying to figure out ways to completely redirect all of that water that comes from those neighborhoods somewhere else. And this is not the only situation like this around town. There are many others that we know about. But this is just one that a stormwater master plan will allow us to go in and go, okay, let's look at the system in a comprehensive way. Let's analyze where the problems are and start developing solutions, because sometimes what we're doing is we're fixing problems downstream without ever thinking about what the problems are upstream. So it's exacerbating the problem.
Those were all sinkholes, or there's that one sinkhole? What are these?
Those are just the manhole locations, the yellows, but there is a sinkhole location close to here as well. So one of the other things that we're doing in this phase of the process is we're doing a preliminary infrastructure condition assessment, and there are 16 different zones throughout this service area. I'm just going to talk about Zone 4A today, which is in the Midtown area. And as you can see, it's about 15 square miles, and there's about 174 miles of drainage just in this area. But as you can see, the average age of this infrastructure in this part of town is 35 to 45 years old. And I would just point out that, when we install this type of infrastructure, we expect it to last, when it is properly maintained, for 30 to 50 years. This infrastructure has not been properly maintained for most of its life. So we are already, if we were properly maintaining it, nearing the end of its life for most of this. And again, most of this is corrugated metal pipe, and we expect just in this one area, 85% of that pipe to be failing and near failing. And as you can see, we own about 71% of the infrastructure in here, so it's our problem that we are going to have to deal with. So kind of what the next point is kind of what are we currently spending on stormwater related issues? We spend about $7.7 million a year in ARTSA, and we have been able to go back and find out roughly that the LURSAs, the 21 different LURSAs, are spending about $640,000 a year just on stormwater related issues. But just to kind of break that out a little bit, there are certain requirements within our MS4 permit that we are required to do, and the biggest chunk of that is street cleaning. So we go out and clean the streets as part of our stormwater cleaning 3 to 4 times a year throughout town. And then obviously we do some catch basin and manhole cleaning, some drainage structure cleaning, and a few other small items. So that only leaves us about $2 million for street maintenance to actually do its core job function, of maintaining the infrastructure. And again, as I mentioned earlier, they don't do the large construction projects when pipes have already failed. They can come in and help out a little bit if we catch them before they failed. But once they have failed, it's very difficult for them to actually be able to do the work.
Mr. Trainee has joined us.
So, as I mentioned at the beginning, kind of how who pays now for under our current model, and as I mentioned, it's a property tax-based model. And there, within the service area, there are roughly 64,000 property taxpayers, parcels in this area, and there's 6,000 that are non-payers. And under switching to a stormwater utility model, it would be rate-based, and all of the parcels would, under this proposal, pay for stormwater-related activities. So, what are the next steps? Over the next couple of months, we're going to continue doing the condition assessment for the other zones. We're going to identify some other stormwater management issues that Arts Alerts and DOT have. We have, like I mentioned, we have developed a comprehensive outreach plan. So we're going to be kind of taking the show on the road and going to all of the community councils as well as other organizations to talk about this. And then just, we'll obviously be back in front of the assembly at some point in the future as well to give another update. And then the plan would be we present this in early January to the assembly.
I have a couple questions. You want to take
Sure.
some now? Mr. Dunbar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Jason, we funded, was it 300,000, 400,000?
300,000.
300,000 to study this. Is this work product one of those, the things that came out of that, or is that a separate thing we're going to see later?
No, this is part of, a
part
lot
of
of the
that.
data that we've gathered in here is part of the.
So what other work products are going to come out of that? Is there going to be a more detailed report that we're going to see at some point?
Yeah, we will have essentially all of the zones on a preliminary condition assessment. So every part of town, you will know, what we believe the average age to be, what it looks like, as well as a conversation about service level, what a service level could potentially look like here in Anchorage.
And so, Mr. Chairman, to follow up
Go
on
ahead.
that, two other quick questions. I think you guys answered this at the last hearing on this or presentation on this, but just to remind myself, do we need a plebiscite to do this, or can we do it strictly through ordinance? And then you said there are these 6,000 exempt parcels that would now be subject to these fees. I assume that includes federal and state parcels.
Correct.
Okay. But not J-Bear because they're outside of the
Yes,
zone.
yes, they are outside of the proposed service area right now.
Okay. And the first question, do we need a plebiscite?
No. This could be done through assembly.
Kind of a follow-on on that.
A vote of the people.
Plebiscite.
Appreciate that.
You
Not catching what happened.
you mentioned that impermeable area. Are we going to be taxed upon the size of the impermeable area on the property or based upon property value?
So it would, there are a number of different rate structures that could be used. It could be, we could do just a flat rate for all residential properties, or we could as well have the option of doing a rate structure that is based on the amount of impermeable surface that a property has.
Okay. Mr. Abbott, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, just that the key term there is rate, not tax. And this would be just like a utility bill. And, I mean, it may not be monthly, all of that rhythm is yet to be sorted out. But it would be a utility fee or assessment, not a tax.
It could be added onto the utility bill that we currently receive, assuming we currently
There are
receive
lots of
one.
jurisdictions that use other utilities to collect the stormwater utility assessments, and that might be a model here, yet to be determined.
Other questions? I guess I'm glad to see it coming forward because I think it's necessary. And you and I had a little discussion ahead of time here, and you were talking about in some places where we have made improvements, anticipating or at least improving our infrastructure. Is that happening throughout the community? I know we were talking about one in West Anchorage area, and but that's happening throughout. We're taking advantage of projects come up to improve the stormwater collection system.
So currently, the way that a lot of improvements are made is through just the general bond election
Projects.
that we have. And the one that I mentioned earlier is the Spinard Road project. One aspect of that was improving the stormwater infrastructure along that corridor and installing an oil and grid separator to collect the stormwater prior to it going into Westchester Lagoon.
I'm pretty
So
impressed.
that's just one area
Yeah.
around town that those types of improvements are happening, but
Right now, we fund the capital improvements to the drainage system, typically through bonds. And they're frequently blended projects. So you will see a road and drainage project. Turning Parkway in your neck of the woods, Mr. Steele,
Also.
Mr. Croft, was described as a road project, and we did reconstruct the road and add pedestrian facilities, but probably the majority of the expense of the project was drainage related. And so if we went to a model like this, we would still do consolidated projects like that. It wouldn't make sense to do a road and a drainage project separately in the same right-of-way, but we would split the costs. And some of the capital expense would come from the drainage utility, and some of the capital expense would continue to come from road bonds.
Did the Turnigan project get a grit separator as well?
I don't remember.
Or just
I would have to check on that.
Just
specific
pipes.
one. The
Yeah.
Turnigan Boulevard
Yeah.
project this year, I'd have to check
okay.
On that, so I can get that information to you.
Yeah, Fish Creek's right there. So I'm concerned, or I'm actually excited about the fact that that this type of system would, I believe, help improve our creeks, and I would suspect help improve the sedimentation of those creeks, such that we might be able to gain some savings actually in terms of dredging and that type of thing. So, as minuscule as it might be. Other questions? Conclusions? What do you want from us?
I think the last point that I would make is that some of the members of France aren't here, but I do just want to point out that for this to be successful, we are going to need to work with each of the individual versas to make sure that we improve that area as well, because water runs downhill. So if you're at the top of the mountain, you may not see some of the issues, but making sure that they have a properly functioning stormwater system as it begins to come down into Midtown and West Anchorage is going to be vital. Because again, as I said, we can fix all the problems downstream, but if we don't also address some of the upstream problems, we're just going to be paddling up a creek.
So to speak. Any questions or comments from the audience? Anybody just burning to say something? Well, if folks don't have any more questions, we can shut this down unless we want to have some more discussion on it just among ourselves.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good job. I'm excited. You didn't know that we were so far advanced there in Spinard, did you?
I did not. Would have been
Did
amazing.
you see that construction project they were doing over in the parking lot?
Yeah, I've been walking by it each morning.
Yes.